Shalom Aleichem to you all. And what response do I hear? Well, you're all on mute, so I can't hear it. But that spoils my punchline because you're going to contradict me. If I say Shalom Aleichem, everybody's going to say Aleichem Shalom, directly opposite of what I'm going to say. And that actually summarizes very clearly and quickly why there are so many synagogues in London. Because one person says one thing, the other one says the opposite. And that's how we manage to get so many synagogues. But I'll tell you more about them as we go along. But I feel that I really should start off by telling you a little bit of my personal history. Because as I get older, I forget it myself, so it's best I say it. And I was born in Gateshead. I'm sure you've all heard of Gateshead. As far as the Jewish community here in London, is that at the present time, there's estimated to be about 280,000 Jews in Britain, of which 60%, so we're talking about 170,000 of them living in London. But then the major centers of Jews, certainly Orthodox Jews, in the rest of the country are focused in Manchester, which is a growing community, very much so, and of course Gateshead. Gateshead is world-renowned for its seat of learning. And then the smaller Jewish communities in places like Leeds, very few in Liverpool now, it's dwindling. There are Jews in Bournemouth, there are Jews in Brighton, places of holiday or resorts, but it's contracting. People are centering or focusing on places like London, Manchester, and Gateshead. So I was born in Gateshead. I do see that one of the audience so tonight is shaking their head. And maybe you remember, I don't know, but my father, Oliver Sholem, may he rest in peace, was secretary of Gateshead Yeshiva. That's why we were living in Gateshead. And I was born there. I don't know how old I was, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months. We were then moved to Manchester. But whilst in Gateshead, I was born in a street called Rectory Road, which later on became the local grocery store, and it became the start of the kosher milk business and service in Gateshead started from that address. My family then moved to Manchester, and my father, Oliver Sholem, got the very same job as administrator, secretary of Manchester Yeshiva, more commonly known as Manchester Talmudical College. I'm not going to go into great detail about my life, but I will say a few things. Number one is that sadly, just 2 months after my third birthday, my mother passed away. A year or two later, my father married when I was about 5, and the stepmother was very good to me, very kind, very domesticated, capable, seamstress, cook, all those type of things, fantastic. But again, unfortunately, just 2 weeks after my 14th birthday, my father too passed away, and therefore I was brought up by my stepmother, and I had to leave home because, according to Jewish law, one cannot. Although she was my stepmother and I was very close to her, but nevertheless we weren't blood relatives, and it became a problem of me living with her in the house. So I ended up in the local yeshiva at the age of 15, and from then on I was boarded out. At the age of 18, I got permission from the Rebbe to go to America, and I studied in the Lubavitch Yeshiva, known as 770, for 4.5 years. Then I got engaged to a local Chabad young lady, resident of Crown Heights, originating from Moscow. She was actually born in Tashkent because her life was one of running together with the rest of the family. And then after 5 years in the States, the Rebbe sent me to London as a shliach. It's interesting that when, as many of the students at the time who having learned in yeshiva, not gone off to learn a profession, not gone to university, not having any hands-on, well, I did have hands-on work because I got used to the idea of teaching and talking in spare time, and acting as a trainee rabbi. It was all useful experience. But when I got married, and I didn't know what should I do now. So, like all young students at the time, we asked the Rebbe for his advice. And the Rebbe said to me, find jobs in London, where I'd never been, Manchester, which I knew well, Montreal, where I'd learned for 6 months whilst I was engaged, because the Rebbe didn't want us to be in the same city whilst engaged, because that's a distraction. And the other possibility was to look for a job in New York. And he said he will choose. And when I wrote to London and said, this is what the Rebbe said, they said, well, we don't have a job for him, but if the Rebbe suggests it, we better create a job. So they created a job. And I don't know whether they're sorry to this day, but I'm not sorry, that's for sure. And the Rebbe said, go to London. So that's how it was. I came to London with my wife, who felt very strange here, but that was when our work started as a shaliach, as an emissary, as a worker full about it. Prior to that, I just want to mention some other thing about my education in Manchester. My cousin, who is, I do believe, the grandmother of Rabbi Levi Liberov, and she's my cousin, she was a Sufrin. She and I were the first two of the first 8 students to become the pioneers of a new Jewish school in Manchester. Prior to that, there was only one Jewish school, and it was a school which it was Jewish by name, and it was Jewish to a certain extent, but one can say that the education was really concentrated Jewishly, so much so that the Orthodox people in Manchester at that time did not send their children to that school. They sent them to a non-Jewish school, especially when they reached the age of high school, in order that they should not be affected by a watered-down education which they would have received in the only Jewish school. So a few parents came together and they said, let's create a school. And they created a school, a primary school, an infant junior school, and my cousin, Mrs. Liberov, and I were 2 of the first 8 students. And it so happened that at that time there was no senior school or grammar school, as you might want to call it in England. And when it did open, when I reached the age of 11, I became another pioneer of that newly created school. So I've had some interesting things in that respect. But then I came to London. I came to London a long time after Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell came here it was King Edward, I don't remember which one, but King Edward, he ousted all the Jews. He kicked out, sent us away. He didn't exterminate, but he expelled all Jews from London. It was in the 1643, I think, but certainly it was the 17th century, that Oliver Cromwell decided that it's right and time for the Jewish people to be brought back to the land, they're allowed to come back to the United Kingdom. He had 2 reasons. That we know of, but the people might know of more reasons, but I know of 2 reasons. Number one is that it wasn't really a sincere and honest decision why that he was befriending Jews, but rather he heard about their acumen and their ability to raise funds, to create jobs, to do things, that he felt that the wealth that they would create and the business opportunities that would arise prompted him to suggest that the Jewish people should now come back to England, which they did. The other reason is very different and very strange, but it's interesting. I'd only heard it recently, and that is he had somewhere, I don't know where he got it from, he had this, or the people believed that their so-called Messiah cannot come until all Jews become Christians. So in his effort to bring their Messiah, so God forbid, it had to be a situation that the Jews must come and we will take on that job of converting them to Christianity. But the end result is anyway that the Jewish people were allowed to come. And it was in 1701 that the first Jewish synagogue was created, which was it's known today as Bevis Marks, Bevis Marks, and that's because it's situated in that street. It holds the record of being the oldest shul, perhaps the only shul anywhere in the world that has had continuous services for over 300 years. Over 300 years, always continuous service. The building it's called a Spanish and Portuguese Sephardi community. The building was created by the architect was a Quaker. His name was Avis or something. He was a Quaker, and the shul was built at the time for £2,650, which equates to about $400 today. That's how it costs. And why he did it because he had great interest in it. But when it came to paying him, he didn't want any money because he felt it's a privilege to build a house for God, even though he wasn't Jewish, but that's how he termed it, a house for God, and that's what a shul is. Interestingly, that Queen Anne took a beam from her boat and she donated it, which it was used to the roof of this particular shul, Beavis Mark shul. I don't know whether she was thinking of Noah's Ark or whatnot, but anyway, she gave a beam, and that's how it was. And it has a whole load of it's got sorry, it's got a lot of things which feature number 10, number 12. 10 because of the Ten Commandments, 12 because of the tribes of Israel. But I don't remember exactly what items, whether it's the chandeliers or whether it's the pews. But one other interesting thing about them is, I don't know if you know what the word cylinder is in America. I don't know if you use it. It's called a top hat. That the wardens, the gaboim, even today wear a top hat in that shul. It's very interesting. And I do recall that the ladies' gallery, which obviously is up there, is supported by 12 columns. That is supported by 12 columns. And there are 7 large candelabras, and even to this day you will see raw candles in those candelabras. Well, I haven't been there for some years. I don't know if they're lit or not, and there's a lot of pomp and circumstance and performance. It really is. If anybody comes to London, it's worth that visit. But that shul is over 300 years. But what's happened since then? What's happened is that I won't go into the various details of how communities were created. Jews came over from Germany. There was the Hanover minhag, there was the Frankfurt minhag, there was the Hamburg minhag. There was all sorts of minhagim. But what's known today as England, as minhag Anglia, the English minhag, started basically when the United Synagogue was created, and the United Synagogue celebrated, it didn't celebrate, it should have celebrated its 150th anniversary last summer. But sadly, because of COVID, it could not go ahead with any of the plans that it had in stock for us all. But that's how old that United Synagogue is. That is the largest body today of organized Jewish community. I'll come back to the United Synagogue, but I want to go back some years when I first came to London in the 1960s. At that time, there were some small Hasidic groups in existence. There was Satmar, there was Ger, there was Vishnitz, there was Bobov, there was Bells, but they were all small. And there was also Lubavitch. At the time in London, there was one very, very well-known school, very orthodox and well-known, known as the Sodei HaTorah, which most of the Orthodox children went to. There was another school which was not so Orthodox, but it was Orthodox. It was small, a bit more modern. And then Lubavitch in 1962 started their own school. 1962, and it attracted, besides Lubavitch families, Mizrahi families, other Jews from the United Synagogue, and it was very, very successful. But at that time, those were the only 3 or 4 schools that existed. Since then, the area of Stamford Hill in which Lubavitch was based itself has blossomed. It has spread. It has grown so much so that every single group that you can think of has got their own school. I should have mentioned before, the Adass has their own school, which was known as the Avigdor, named after Avigdor Schoenfeld, who was a man who was very, very much involved in things like kinder transport and bringing people over from Europe. I think it was him, together with somebody else. I don't remember the name. Do you know the story of a few Rabbonim, including him? There might have been Rabbi Herzog as well, who went over to Europe to try and find Jewish children who had been taken in by the convents, taken in by the Christians out of, well, sympathy, but they had obviously put a great deal of effort into transforming their beliefs into that of Catholicism, into that of Christianity. And when they went from one convent to another convent, and they knew convents where there must be Jewish kids there, and they went and they wanted to know, are there any Jewish children here? They went to this place and they said, we are from London. we've come from London. We want to see, we want to meet Jewish children and return them to their families or to the faith or to the whatever. They were told there are no Jewish children in this convent. So they felt very surprised about that. It was bedtime, but anyway, nevertheless. So they said, do you mind? Can we go and have a look? Can we walk? Yeah, here's where the children are. Here's their beds. And they went into the bedroom, into the what's it called, a big room? Into the dormitory. And I went into there and they said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And all of a sudden, a whole lot of little children answered, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Olam Voed. And they were able to save and bring back those children from incarceration in these areas by this wonderful, I think it might have been Dinah Bramsky also, I don't remember exactly the details of it was, but it was a wonderful thing. So this Rabbi Schoenfeld was very involved in that type of thing, bringing children over in the kinder transport and settling them. They named the school after him, the Avigdor School. So, but at that time, there were only these few schools. But now today, if you go to London today, Stamford Hill, I wouldn't call it a ghetto, but for those of you who live in America, when you say, and I have this experience, I come to America, our daughter lives in Florida, I come to America and people say, oh, where are you from? Oh, London. Oh, where do you live? Golders Green. No, Stamford Hill. Yeah, the people know it's Golders Green and Stamford Hill. It's actually Stamford Hill, Golders Green and Hendon, which is neighbouring to Golders Green. They're really together. And today it's Boreham Wood and it's Radlett and Bushy and Elstree. That's the way people are going. What were people doing in Stamford Hill? What were they doing there? When Jews first came over from Europe, and obviously England or Britain was an obvious place for people to come over to from Europe when they wanted to come pre-war or they wanted to escape or whatever was going on, they would get on a boat, and some Jews arrived in a place in Scotland called Dundee. I don't know if you've heard of that, Dundee. So one or two ended up in Glasgow. There's a small Jewish community today in Glasgow. They had about 30 years ago, they might have had 4 shuls. Today, I think they have 2 now. So they came there. Then others came to London. When they got off the boat, they went straight away to the east end of London, which was close to the where the boats docked on the River Thames. That's where Jews started out at the turn of the century. I'm talking about the turn in the 1900s, the beginning of the 1900s. Then eventually, as people they became a bit more wealthier, a bit more broader outlook, they started to move north towards and landed in Stamford Hill. But even in the 60s, where there was a good settlement of Jews in Stamford Hill, it does not compare to how it is today. Today, you walk down the streets of Stamford Hill, the area of Stamford Hill. So many houses are no longer houses, they are shuls on so many different streets, because absolutely every Hasidic group that you can think of has got a shul and has got a school. And those who have more like from the Germans, from the Ashkenazim, for people I'm not being derogatory in calling them yekkers, but people say they're yekkers, whatever. They have got also more than 2 shuls. They have grown phenomenally. And that's how it is. And there's plenty of schools. So much so, as Jews got more proficient, more prosperous, they started gravitating towards Golders Green and Hendon. Today, in Golders Green and Hendon, not like Stamford Hill, but nevertheless the same concept, it's full, absolutely full with kosher stores, full with butchers, full with restaurants. You know, in the 1960s, when I came to England, there was only one kosher restaurant. And not only there was only one kosher restaurant, but if you were Orthodox, if you were frum, it was frowned upon if you actually ate in a restaurant. But today, it's become like America. There's galore, absolutely galore, in whether it's just shawarma or whether it's shawarma, or whether it's milkshakes, whether it's fish, whether it's fleishik, whatever it is, you can find what you want. A pizza, of course. I mean, come on, there's loads and loads. Have your choice. And that's how it is in Golders Green and Hendon today. And they're also, although it's not as Hasidic as Stamford Hill, there are several, if quite a few, Hasidic settlements in Golders Green and Hendon. I want to digress again a bit because I feel I should mention it. And let's talk about some famous Jewish personalities of UK. The one that springs to mind more so than anybody else, to my mind, is Sir Moses Montefiore. Everybody has heard, I'm sure, of Sir Moses Montefiore, and what has he achieved and what did he do, etc. He was known actually in some areas as the protector of the way he stood up and cared for Jews. We all know, I hope you do, that the monument that is now existing today, okay, it's even more guarded and shielded, but the monument that you will see in all those old pictures above Kever Rachel, over the grave of Rachel, he is the one who built that, and which of course stands to this very day. He was the one who did that. He traveled great lengths. He took a long time to get from Britain to Israel, but wherever he went, he was spoke up as a savior and a guardian of Jewish people, and he was a very wealthy man, as we know. And people with the admiration, the love that they have for him was amazing. He himself was born in 1784 in Livorno in Italy. And of course, his grandfather, with the same name as him, as Moshe, was a Sephardic Jew, who later settled in London. And it's said that Sir Moses Montefiore could trace back his lineage to the time that the Jews were expelled from Spain. He became rich by becoming a member at a young age of the London Stock Exchange. There was only 12 licensed Jewish brokers, and he was a young man. But in a matter of a few years, he amassed a great wealth, and he became a member of the London aristocracy. In 1812, which is a famous year for its overture, and not only that, because of Lubavitch, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe came out in support of not anti-Napoleon. That was in 1812, and so he married in 1812. He was always an Orthodox Jew, always, and he and his wife Judith voted a lot to Judaism, and it was in it was in 1827 that he embarked on this long journey, which took him all the way through all the countries in Europe, and eventually landed up in Palestine, which was part of the Ottoman Empire at the time. If you have been to England, if there's a seaside town known as Ramsgate, and in Ramsgate to this very day is where he and his wife are laid to rest, and there is a shul, beautiful shul. Sadly, it's not used because there's no local minyan. There's not enough Jews living in Ramsgate. The nearest place to it is Margate, which might have a minyan or something, but very few Jews live out there. Although it's interesting to know that not so far from there's a new Jewish settlement started up in a place called Canvey Island. Because of thank God, the growth of the communities in Stamford Hill, the prices of houses have escalated. I no longer live in Southgate. In 1960, I paid $6,300 for my house. I sold it in 1980 for £39,000. And today, you cannot get it for less than £1.25 million. And all it is, it's not one of those beautiful houses you find in Florida where my daughter lives, with grounds front, back, and side, and all it is a terraced house. That's how things are. So because in Stamford Hill, you can't get big houses, you can't even get 3-bedroom houses at a decent price. They started a group of Hasidim, it must have been about 4 years ago, started a new settlement in an area called Canvey Island. And now they have a school, they have shuls, they have a few hundred families settled in a short period of time. And by road, it takes them 3/4 of an hour to drive into London if they need to. But now they've got their own butcher shop, they've got their own things over there. It's amazing. It really is amazing. So in that area, there's this Margate is not too far away from it. It is a distance, but not too far, but it's not at all Orthodox. But in Ramsgate, where that shul is, people go constantly to look at the beautiful shul, which was created by Sir Moses Montefiore. Behind it, he had a kollel. And the kollel had what is described in the Talmud as asora batlonim. That means you have 10 people who just sit and learn. Or when we say about today's language, say a person's a batlon. Oh, he means he's incompetent. But that's not what they mean. Batlonim are people who were not involved in worldly matters. They would sit and learn all day. He had a kollel. He had 10 of them. So he had always in-house minyan with no problem, and he housed them in a semicircle of houses behind the shul, and we've seen where it was. It no longer exists, but that's what kind of person he was. And it was a 24-acre estate. He bought it in 1831, and he built a synagogue. And the top of the shul, the synagogue, the shul, is a replica of the top of Rachel's tomb, the dome. That's how it is. He had traveled to Eretz Yisrael, to Palestine and Israel 7 times in his lifetime, and he was well known with the prime ministers and with the aristocracy and the people with clout and whatnot. And there was one occasion when he was invited to have a meal with no less than Queen Victoria in her palace. And it was, I think it was on a Shabbos. So first of all, he insisted, and he got total new vessels, kalim, crockery, cutlery, and kosher food, everything laid on. Not only that, although she sent one of her golden chariots and whatever it was to bring him, he walked the whole way. And it was a long distance. But he did that because he was a religious Jew. But that was Moses Montefiore. So I don't want to go on then about him, but he was a defender of the Jews wherever he went, and that's why his memory is recalled is because of all the things that he did. It actually was Sir Moses Montefiore. You might have heard this about other people, but it was Sir Moses Montefiore who was asked by Queen Victoria about his wealth. How much do you own? And he gave some figure. He told her some figure. And it wasn't an outlandish figure. She said, come on, don't kid me with that figure. That's yeah. He said, no. And he explained to her about the fact is that the only money that he can say is his is that which he gave away in charity. That will accompany him on his final journey. The rest is nothing is guaranteed. And you know something? When I think about it today, I'm not talking about Moses Montefiore. When you only think about the Rothschilds, and there's many Rothschilds in England, many, but you won't find maybe more than one who's Jewish. And you won't find a great deal of great things about them at all. So having a lot of money, whether some of them do have some still, there's a bank, but most of them, it's just nothing to talk about. It's all gone. So let's get back to the way things are in London and in England. So in London, we have the community of Stamford Hill, which is vibrant, which is it's a beautiful community to settle in. They have their own Hatzalah, for example. They started with 1 ambulances, now they have 5. They have smaller ones, emergency vehicles. It's well organized. It's organized. One of the kashrut organizations is known as Kedassia, which is Aramaic for according to law. Like, in Israel, you say datim, come to the word kedatim, Kedassia. And there's, of course, the United Synagogue and the London Beth Din. And I would fail in my duty if I didn't talk about the London Beth Din. The London Beth Din is the one that serves the United Synagogue. But it always, always, always has ultra right-wing dayanim, no half-baked chas v'shalom. They were the real thing. And in fact, as a member of Lubavitch, even though there's Kedassia, if I wanted to bring to fruition somebody who wishes to convert to Judaism, I would go through their route because they do it so thoroughly. They don't do it in 3 months. They don't do it perhaps in 3 years, but they have such a thorough way of going through it and bringing the person to the fruition of being absolutely 100% convert. And there are some beautiful ones. I must tell you, there are some beautiful converts within the community. They're also very good with gittin, and they're also very good, I must say, with marriages. Because very often you get someone who wants to, people have to register the marriage with one of the organizations. And sometimes you come along a person who was not known to be Jewish, having to prove that their mother was Jewish or their grandmother was Jewish, etc. They have got the connections to delve and to dig, to dig and unearth the connections and bring the proof that this person can get married according to halacha. And it's a very wonderful organization in that respect. There's another group called the Federation of Synagogues, which is in fact, as old as the United Synagogue. It was originally created to be more to the right of the United Synagogue, but over the years it sort of lost its impetus. But today that is now also coming forth, has its own Beis Din, a very good, reliable 100% Beis Din. So now in London we're fortunate to having three lots of Beis Dins who are all reliable and all performing wonderful, and also three different organizations giving kashrut authorization and hechsherim and supervision licenses, which one can rely on, which is a very important thing. I want to just tell you a bit more about myself in so far, because I have one or two interesting things to tell you. And one is as follows, that in 1980, although I worked full-time for Lubavitch at the headquarters, which were based in Stamford Hill, I felt that I'm not doing much weekends. Come on. Weekends, why waste a weekend when I can do something? It's not like a Chabad house. We're working 7 days a week, and sometimes it's even more hard. You've got more work to do on the weekends because you get the visitors and you get the meals and you get the activities and you get the stranded people who suddenly need somewhere to go and to stay. So working for a Lubavitch organization, which is not a Chabad house with a place for people to sleep, and not, it's basically a school, an educational establishment, although of course there are lots of outreach or things. I took this, my wife and I took the decision that if the Rebbe is in agreement, we will go and live in a different area and take a part-time weekend job. And I did that. I moved to an area called Southgate. None of you will have heard of it, because even Jews in London have never heard of it. Southgate, what's in Southgate? What they didn't realize is that at the time that I moved to Southgate, there was a local shul with 1,200 members. Now that's not small. 1,200 members, which could be more than, because we're not counting kids. And I took over the job as youth director of that shul as a part-time, and we had our own minyan on Shabbos, which we used to get 60 teenagers coming to our minyan on Shabbos. The boys themselves would lane. Sometimes it would be 7 boys, each one a different parasha. If one failed or didn't turn up, then I would fill in for them. And on Sunday morning, we would have a Hebrew school for them, a cheder, Sunday school for teenagers. And the average roll each week was 52, to be precise. I don't like to exaggerate, 52. And it was very good. It went on. I did that job for 14 years. And then when I got 14 years later, people felt, well, you might be a little bit too old to be a youth organizer. Well, I don't agree, but nevertheless, I ran a day camp for 7 years with my wife. We started off in the first year with 40 children. And by the time we came to our 7th year, we were running a camp of 240 children, boys and girls, 240. And we didn't have a break or a vacation for 7 years, because it was always in the summer. So anyway, but after 14 years, I gave up that job. And then almost immediately, a friend came over who was a member of the Reform Synagogue, knew me because he lived on the same street as me. And he says, now and again, he says, I go to a small Orthodox synagogue in Enfield, which is 4 miles away. I go there because they struggle for minyan. It's an elderly community, average age is 65, whatever it might, or even older. And he says, they're looking for a rabbi. Well, are you busy? Are you doing anything? So, and he, the Reformed synagogue member, recommended me to the Orthodox shul. And I took on the job, and that was 14 years ago. 14 years ago, I've been doing that. I did both jobs together. It's now 28 years. But what I want to say is that after being there for about 3 years, and this I thought is a beautiful story, the membership is, I don't want to be derogatory about this membership, but my membership is between 75 and 90 or something. It's old, thank God. In the 14 years I've been there, there's been one bar mitzvah. In the 14 years I've been there, there's been about 20 second bar mitzvahs. You know what second bar mitzvahs are, Johnathan, in America? Second bar mitzvahs? When somebody reaches the age of 83, they have a celebration known as the second bar mitzvah, because it is 70 years from the first. The lifespan of a Jew is 70 years, and now they're 83, second bar mitzvah. We have quite a few of those. But it was about after 3 years of being in the community, we found out that there was 1 or 2 people who had never had a bar mitzvah at all, because their bar mitzvah came out in the years like 1945. And because of the war, they had no bar mitzvah, none whatsoever. never got called up, never put on tefillin, knew nothing. So we said, right, we're going to make a bar mitzvah for you boys. Doesn't matter how old you are, we're going to make a bar mitzvah for you. It turned out we had seven men who had never had a bar mitzvah in the 1940s. So how old were they now? They were 70, perhaps 80. We made a beautiful bar mitzvah. And the novelty of having seven boys was that we could give an aliyah to the Torah to each one of them. 7 call-ups, we had 7 guys. We had a Cohen, we had a Levi, and we had 5, and they weren't able to do the Haftorah, and we did that. In the United Synagogue, and it's the United Synagogue actually, it belongs to the United Synagogue, Marshall. The United Synagogue custom is that when a boy gets bar mitzvah, and he gets up there at the age of 13 and does his piece, then the rabbi makes a speech, gives him a certificate for having the achievement, and then make a presentation of a siddur or a chumash, give it to him. So what we did is, we got them to pay for a siddur, and we put a label in it. And when it came to the celebration, we gave them the siddur for them to return and donate it to the shul, so that the shul has 7 new siddurim. And when they come in on Shabbos morning, they look for their own siddur, which is an incentive for them to come to shul, an incentive to find their own siddur. And that was something which they were happy to have it. Instead of taking it home, they're happy to have it in shul. On Sunday morning, we had a minyan. We don't know, I must tell you, this shul does not have a minyan normally in the morning. On that Sunday, the following day, Sunday morning, we did have a minyan, and we had a big, obviously other people came as well. We had a big fanfare, and it went down very, very well indeed. So much so that people to this day talk about it, recognize it, and people started coming, some of those started coming to shul regularly. The member of the Reform Synagogue very, very rarely goes to the Reform Synagogue, and almost every week comes to our shul. And that's it. But that's one story. I want to tell you another story. My wife complains, doesn't complain often, but she just complains. She's complaining that there's too much clutter in the house, too much clutter. Oh, we collected things over here. So we got about 100 LPs, long playing records, some of chazonas, some of more modern Hasidic music or Israeli music, or I think we even might have one from Jackie Mason's. I know we got a whole collection of different things. Well, we want to get rid of it. Although we could play it, we still got an old player. She wants it out. I don't blame her. We've got to think about the future. So I saw an advertisement in the Jewish Chronicle. Jewish Chronicle is a Jewish paper which has served the United Anglo Jewry for over 100 years. And quite frankly, for an Orthodox viewpoint, it's trash. I can't say anything else but that. It does not represent a Jewish viewpoint, sadly. Now and again, they have an article by a rabbi here and there, but it's not the real thing anymore. There's other papers. People buy Hamodia, by the Jewish Tribune, whatever. There was an advert there. Someone told me about it. The guy's collecting LPs, long LP records. Okay, so phoned him up, and we made a deal. Asked him to come around. We got some records, and he looked at them. He came around on a Sunday morning, and he looked at them, and he said, "Nothing much here." He said, "My advice is, give it to a charity shop." Okay, thank you. So then, as a true Lubavitcher, my wife and I said to him that there's a verse in Psalms which says, "Hashem mitzadi gever kononu," that God directs the steps of man. And the real reason why you are here today is not because we want to get rid of our records, not because you wanted to come and look at the records. We came here because God directed your steps to come to our house on this morning. And therefore, as my wife says to him, you're here to put on tefillin. He tells us his life story, that his mother was a very Orthodox lady from an Orthodox family from Stamford Hill, going back all those years, probably 60 years ago. Sadly, she married out. And because she married out, her family reacted in a way that they did not want to have anything ever more to do with her, sadly. Anyway, that's the story. But it was, and she had 2 children, him, Daniel, and a younger sister. When he was 3 years old, his father, who was non-Jewish, left her. walked out on her, and he never saw him again. A year later, his mother, who was young, suffered a stroke. And as a result of it, she was left paralyzed, partially paralyzed. She could not cope with the two children. One was 4 years old, one was 2.5 years old. Social services couldn't find anybody within the Jewish community to look after them. So they had no choice. They packed them off and sent them off to an area called Somerset, which is in the west country of the United Kingdom. It's probably 150 miles away. Put them with a small suitcase, put the two kids on a train on their own, and sent them to a convent in Somerset. And he says, I was only 4, but I remember to this very day carrying that little suitcase with my little sister on the train by ourselves. We got a very friendly nun from the convent who took us, and we stayed there for many years. And of course, they tried to inculcate him, etc. He said, as a result, he has no interest in Judaism, none whatsoever. Not only that, however, he says it's what he does find strange is in the area which he lives, which is not a Jewish area. There is a shul there, beautiful shul, actually, a very beautiful shul. He said, when I walk past it, I get a thumping in my chest. I get something, I get a feeling, I get a lump in my throat. Something there, he says, there is something within me which tells me that I should be in there. But he won't bring himself to go in there because of his family didn't want him there. His mother died. When he told her, he said, right, his mother's passed away, she's got to be buried. So he got in touch with his mother's sister. He got in touch with his own sister. No one was interested in joining him to go to the funeral or of any interest whatsoever. He paid a lot of money to have her buried. In England, the system is that if you belong to a shul, you pay a small amount, and you can pay that for all your life, and you get free burial. So, it's sometimes it costs you a fortune, which is a good sign because you lived a long time. But basically, it's a good plan. He forked out. There was a time subsequent to that where he tried to patch up differences with his sister. It didn't go, never went. And that's how he feels. But he came to our house and we persuaded him, you've got to put on tefillin. And he did. He put on tefillin. But in the middle of it talking, we said, is this the first time? He said, no, I did it once before. He said, at one time in my life, when I was about 18, 19 years old, I just felt I should go to Israel. Got nothing in England. I should go to Israel. I'm a Jew. And he went to Israel. And he served for 3 years in the Golani Brigade, which is a very substantial brigade. And he said, whilst there, somebody came over to me and put on tefillin with me. It must have been the Lubavitcher. It must have been somebody from Chabad put on tefillin with me. That was the only other time. And that's the story he came back. So he said, what's going to be with your future? He said, I am going to, he's left in his will instructions to be cremated. Cremated. I said, why? My wife said to him, Hitler did that. Why? He says, because when he gets buried, no one ever is going to visit his grave. He says, he does. He says, I visit my mother's grave. I know where she's buried and I go there often enough. But no one's going to visit me. So he says, I'm going to be cremated. And because I like Israel, I am going to, I'm giving instructions that my ashes should be sprinkled on the Tel Aviv beach. That's what he's going to do. So we spoke to him again and he said, look, we've come so far. We want you to come to us for Shabbos next week. And then when I spoke to him about cremation, I said to him, you love Israel so much. Instead of having cremation, leave instruction in your will that you wish to be buried in Israel. Be buried in Israel, you like it. So he says to me, but it costs a fortune. So I said, what do you care? You're not going to pay for it. It's because you're leaving over a will, and I don't know what's in your will, but you're leaving the money to somebody, and they'll spend the amount of money that's necessary to build. He says, I'll think about it. He says, it's a suggestion I hadn't thought about. I'll think about it. Anyway, my wife phoned him up this week and said, right, you're due to come to us for this Shabbos. He says, I can't come to us this Shabbos. He said, I can't. But what I've done is I've phoned the local shul because you told me that I need to register because of COVID You have to register in advance if you're going to go come to shul. He said, I phoned up the shul to say I'd like to come to services this Saturday. And they told me that the rabbi is on vacation, on holiday, but when he comes back, we will ask him to get in contact with you so you can have a dialogue with him. So that's just a story I want to say, which is, it's a sad story. Equally, it's a story which gives me hope. But thirdly, it tells us that, we have to look at situations and say, somebody ends up on my doorstep, there must be a reason for it. And we've got to utilize it. And we've got to make the most of it. Okay. Shall I take a break now and allow?
Okay, well, let's see if anyone has any questions. If you're on the computer, you can unmute yourself by pressing the space bar. If you're on the phone, you can press star and then 6 to unmute yourself, and then just go ahead and jump in with your question. Your talk was very, very interesting, Rabbi Sufrin. I was fascinated. While you were talking, I looked on my computer for pictures of the Bevis Marks shul. It looks extremely impressive from the inside. Like you said, really full of pomp and circumstance. Very, very impressive. You spoke a lot about Moses Montefiore, and I wanted to ask you about the impact. Maybe you could just remark about it. The impact of Rabbi Johnathan Sachs, who it seems to me was a very towering figure in as a prominent Jew in the United Kingdom, the chief rabbi, but as somebody who affected Jews all over the world as well. What was the attitude towards him? I think he was also a member of the House of Lords, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Did he have would you say, did he have a strong influence on the wider country?
The truth is that when he passed away just less than a year ago, the outpouring of grief and messages of well wishes and sadness at the loss was it was universal in a way, but it was throughout the entire spectrum of Britain, of the United Kingdom. Not just from the lords that were in the House of Lords with him, but not just the clergy of all the other religions, not just through Jews, everywhere. Statesmen, politicians, businessmen. There was a pouring out. Really, I've never seen anything like it. If one would only just see the newspapers of people, of the comments of what people said, and news reporters, newscasts, it was phenomenal. His influence was great. He wasn't the first chief rabbi, actually, to get into the Lords. Before him, Lord Jacobowitz, of blessed memory, Rabbi Dr. Jacobowitz, was given that honor. It's not something that the Jewish community can do, but the world community, the British community, British society recognizes what they are, who they are, the contribution they can make, given that honor. It's an appointment. Only in rare cases is it hereditary, but it's an appointment. Yes, he made a phenomenal influence, absolutely.
What is the relationship like now between the British government and Israel? Is that on a good footing?
It's difficult to know, in my opinion, because in the past, with the most recent conflagration in Gaza, whatnot, the government itself, with the prime minister, were steadying their hand, and that of the country, saying that one must realize the threat and the suffering that the Israelis have in their country. And those, of course, there were the others who talked about how horrendous it was, how out of proportion was the response. Well, everybody says that, but they held on. And they've been very firm at the moment. What happened last week in a way, is because a British person was killed on that ship in the Straits, which their drone attacked. And as a result of that, they've come out very strong in favor of Israel doing what is necessary to sort out the Iranian problem. So basically, those in power have been in favor and have been supporting Israel. But those behind the scenes, who knows? We don't know about the civil service because that's not.
Are there a lot of Arabs and Muslims from the Middle East in London now? So I know they've been coming from the Middle East and they've been coming to other countries in Europe, but are they able to get to London as easily as they are to get to some of the other countries in Europe?
Well, those who are immigrants, unauthorized immigrants, they're coming over in recent weeks in droves, so much so that there's an uproar of talk of getting the Home Secretary, it's her job to monitor immigration, that she should resign because she's been hopeless because they're coming in so in such vast numbers. They're coming over from France and not doing anything about it. And a lot of them are obviously, they are Muslims, but not necessarily would one say that they're hostile ones, or they are ones who are escaping for their own lives. However, there are millions of Muslims in Britain now. Some concentrate, as it was lahavdil, when the Jewish people settled in this country, they used to settle where the cousins were, where the people were, that's how Gateshead came out, that's how Manchester came. They're doing it in places as well. And some of them have been here for so long that you more or less read in the papers on a weekly basis of somebody who's a councillor. That means a member of, not a member of parliament, but a lower strategy, a local person. You find them being suspended. And they're Muslims. They're suspended because they're Jew hate, because of the things that they've been doing on the internet and what they've been doing on the WhatsApp and Facebook, etc. There is quite a bit of that, and it's coming to light. But that's because they've been established for many years.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for that rounding up words. Actually, it's what the Rebbe would often say. A few words from this week's Sedra. He would say to people, Yarich Yomim al Mamlachto. That one who's in a position of what they are, a rabbi, or whatever it might be, that God should grant them that they should be in that position for a long time in ruling and reigning in office and achieve great things. And hopefully I will do the same thing, and I hope you too will achieve great things. And I wish everybody, it's not too early. In fact, it's very, very applicable and appropriate at this time to wish everybody Katiba v'Chatima Tova, a happy new year to be written and inscribed for a healthy, good sabbatical year. And we should be blessed in all aspects of life that we need with goodness and happiness and complete from God's overflowing and abundant hand. And above all, as we need to end off is, we want Mashiach now.
Amen. What a beautiful bracha and what a fantastic way to end. Thank you so much. Everybody, I wish you good health and be well, and we'll see you next time, God willing, very soon. Seid gesund, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.